Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we've been talking a lot of basketball. We just finished breaking down the Mavericks, moving on to the Western Conference Final. We're going to break down the historic Game 7 that has their opponents in the Western Conference Final, that being the Minnesota Timberwolves, setting a record, the largest comeback in Game 7 history. Down 20 points in the third quarter, down 15 points at halftime. That's the largest halftime deficit ever. We'll break down that game coming up in just a second, but before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and anybody else around the world to see. We appreciate everybody for tuning in, listening, watching, and talking some sports with me. If you have a burning sports question, any sport, go ahead and leave it in the comments, leave a donation. I will get to it. I appreciate your comments, your questions. Let me know what you think of anything that I'm talking about here today. But like I was saying, we're going to break down in this segment here the final second round matchup, this one between the Timberwolves and the Nuggets, and as Anthony Edwards promised, it was a Game 7 to remember. It won't go as far as saying the best Game 7 of all time, but it was one heck of a game, and they delivered. Jokic was trying his best to keep them alive. He didn't have his greatest game. Neither did Anthony Edwards. Neither of their number one stars had a great game. It came from their role players, from the rest of the team that was able to come in and really make the difference. For Denver in the beginning of the game, building up that huge lead, it was Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray comes in and he leads this team, his scoring output. The way that he's making shots in the first half is huge. He does not miss seemingly in the first half. He powers them up to that lead. And like I said, Jokic, not an incredibly efficient game from him. Jokic did have 34 points, but 2 of 10 from 3, 13 of 28 from the field. He did have 19 rebounds. He was huge in the post there, but that stat line doesn't really tell the whole story, right? That stat line doesn't say everything that you want it to say when we're talking about this game. Jamal Murray powered them to this point, and he didn't really get the ball. They wanted it to run through Nikola Jokic, which in general is the way to get it done, right? That's usually how you want to run your team if you're the Denver Nuggets, the defending champs. But their offense just was not clicking down the stretch. Jamal Murray stopped making all of his shots. I think he had 2 points down the stretch of that game. You look at it kind of was the opposite for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Obviously, that's how it works. You're gonna, in a 20-point comeback, you're gonna have one team be incredibly successful and the other team kind of fall off a cliff there. But Anthony Edwards, even though he was having a tough game, stayed in there, hit a lot of clutch shots down the stretch of this contest. But the rest of the Timberwolves, I want to give a shout out to. You have the Rudy Gobert, who famously sucks at offense. Famously is very bad at offense, hitting an incredibly tough double-teamed turnaround fadeaway mid-range, nearly from the three-point arc. Money. That's not a shot he normally makes. Rudy Gobert really was a huge part of this game. His defense, his ability to make life hard for Jokic, even though Jokic still had 34 points, he made life hard for him. And that's not an easy thing to do against one of the greatest post finishers in basketball history. His moveset, his ability to get to the rim, it was disrupted. And against Jokic, that's really the best you can hope for, disruption. And it threw him off his game. Karl Anthony Towns played a huge part in this contest. He really was a massive part of what the Minnesota Timberwolves were able to do here. He got in some foul trouble again, which he does tend to do, but 23 and 12, a double double in game 7, 8 of 14 from the field, I believe. He only missed one shot from inside the 3-point line. So it was a great night from him. Rudy Gobert again hitting a lot of tough shots. His defensive effort as well. Again, this defense is insane. This is one of the best defenses of all time. And this is the kind of defense that can help win a championship. You remember back to some of these teams, the Pistons in the early 2000s, powered by their defense. It's a similar kind of build. You know, you have the defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, arguably one of the greatest defensive players of all time, a superstar in Anthony Edwards here. He is doing everything he can. I mean, he again, he didn't have a great game. You have sixth man of the year, Naz Reid, coming off the bench, giving you 11 huge points, always providing energy, even though he's not, filling up the stats sheet. He helped power a 7-0 run down the stretch of the game with about 3 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter. He helped power a 7-0 run that put them up by 10 and basically put the game away. Now, it doesn't always end pretty, but the Nuggets had a very good season, right? This is incredibly, they had a good season, but it's still incredibly disappointing for a team that is the defending champion. They just did not execute in this game, or really in this series. Three of the 4 games that they lost, they just did not execute. And that's not the way that they want to play basketball. Mike Malone, you lose the first 2 games at home. You lose game 7 at home. And then the other loss, you get blown out by 45 points. The games that they lost, they played terribly in. There were games that they were executing at high levels, but 3 of the 4 games that they lost in, you could even make the argument for game 1, they just didn't have it in them. They looked like they were tired, out of gas. They didn't have the ability to keep going down the stretch. And it's a little concerning. I mean, I know playoff runs are tough, right? You're going from playing in June, you get a shorter off season than everybody else, but this Minnesota team and this Denver team, both of them didn't really make too many big changes in the offseason, And they met in the first round last season. And Denver was able to win this in 5. It was a pretty easy 5-game series too, but now they meet here. It's a hard-fought 7-game series where Denver just disappears for 3 of the 4 games, right? Disappears for halves at a time. And they had the same issue against the Lakers, but they always knew when to turn it back on, right? And they always felt like they were in control against the Lakers. But against the Wolves, that defense that was able to put pressure on them, they never really were able to figure it out. And that right there is the biggest loss for them, right? There's now, you don't have Rudy Gobert on every team, but there's a blueprint for how you can try and stop Jokic. This Nuggets team kind of felt like a team of destiny, but this Wolves team is rewriting everything. The passion and energy that they play with through Anthony Edwards, it's super exciting to watch. We talk about a changing of guard a little bit, and I'm not sure if I brought this up in any of our other segments, but I'll definitely get to it in the next segment a little more. I'll just touch on it a little bit here, but all of the stars of yesterday are gone. All of these teams are powered by new age stars, and that was awesome, that second round. It really was. You're going from LeBron and KD to Anthony Edwards and Luka and Jason Tatum and Jalen Brunson and all these guys that were here in the second round. there's going to be some intense rivalries in the future between some of these guys, and it's really cool to see that the NBA is having a passing of the torch moment. So great news for the NBA. Great series. Timberwolves defense is real. And we will break that down coming up in the next segment, where we're going to do a Western Conference Finals breakdown to end our show, breaking down the series between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. So stick around for that. We will be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.